Hey guys, we are gonna react to the Eerie case of the Watcher, and I'm gonna make a baby hat. First, I have to make baby hat's tag. Let's get started.
This week on the season premiere of BuzzFeed Unsolved, we take a look at the Watcher, a stalker who was active as recently as 2017. Ugh.
Why does it look
What do you mean? It's too soon for me.
Okay.
Normally we're covering like cases that are way back in the day. This guy's still out and about. He may watch this show, I don't know. And he could take a little
He probably will.
trip down to sunny California to visit his pals Ryan and Shane in the studio.
Or maybe he'll just be outside the studio, like.
Let's try to bury that down, put it in a box, put it aside.
You know what? I'm loving the energy this season. Let's hop right in. Let's do it.
Let's get into it.
Ooh.
In June 2014, Maria Broaddus, her husband Derek, and their 3 young children were getting ready to move into their new home, 657 Boulevard, in Westfield, New Jersey. The 6-bedroom, $1.3 million house was their dream home, located only a few blocks from Maria's childhood home in what was then the 30th safest town in America, according to the website Neighborhood Scout. A mere 3 days after closing the sale, before the Broaddus family had even moved in, a letter arrived at their new mailbox. The new owner was written by hand on the envelope in thick, clunky letters. The typed letter began, quote, "Dearest new neighbor at 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood." End
Oh
quote.
boy.
The letter, however, was anything but welcoming. It went on, quote, "How did you end up here? Did 657 Boulevard call to you with its force within?"
Dude.
657
Red
Boulevard has
flags.
been the subject of my family for decades
Dude.
now, and as it approaches its 110th birthday,
That's
I have been
house.
put in charge of watching and waiting
What are
for
the
its
keys?
second coming. My grandfather watched the
Fucking
house in
what?
the 1920s, and my father watched
Is
in
this
the
a fucking neighborhood
1960s.
watch?
It is now my time.
So it's like a Batman type. A silent guardian.
Yeah.
Just sounds like it's in his blood,
Creepy.
you know?
It's a nice sentiment. If that sentiment, however, entails you doing some weird things, then maybe it's
Yeah.
not a good family tradition.
Who am I? There are hundreds and hundreds of cars that drive by 657 Boulevard each day. Maybe I am in one. Look at all the windows you can see from 657 Boulevard. Maybe I am in one. Look out any of the
Fucking
many
shit,
windows
dude.
in 657
Stalker.
Boulevard at all the people who stroll by each day. Maybe I am one. End quote.
You're definitely a creep.
It's 2014 and he's writing like it's the 1800s here. Like
Yeah.
a little, this is a teaser.
Fucking weird.
I don't think that's what they're thinking.
Oh, well.
Also, like, I don't know how many houses you've moved into. I've moved into quite a few apartments. And even then, there's usually some kind of welcoming gift from, like, either the property owner,
Yeah.
maybe even the neighbors will bring you cookies.
I mean, in Sims 4, they bring you fruitcake. Although I think in some neighborhoods, it's like different foods.
If I walked into my new house and the first thing I saw was a letter that had this madness inside of it.
Nobody brought me cookies.
Nobody brought you cookies?
Actually, the first place I moved to in LA, somebody took a poop on the doorstep.
Ew.
Yeah, that
And it
sounds
was,
about right.
it was big.
The letter also mentioned specifics about the Broaddus
Oh,
family.
I'm not gonna drink
Quote,
them. Why would I just fucking use them?
"You have children. I have seen them. So far, I
Yeah,
think there are
that
3
makes you
that I have
fucking
counted.
sketchy.
Do you need to fill the house with the young blood I requested? Better
Are
for
you a
me.
fucking
Was
vampire?
your old house too small for the growing family? Or was it greed to bring me your children? Once I know their names, I will call to them and draw them to me." End quote.
That is
In
a
a cursive
fucking
font, the author
bird.
typed the signature, "The Watcher."
What do you think now? Do you think your original thought may be a little bit off base?
Yeah, maybe. I want to give him creep points for this very fun, old-timey threat of I'm going to steal your children.
True.
He's like the Wicked Witch.
He's making himself
Oh,
into a
man.
caricature of a villain, for
Yeah.
sure.
After receiving the letter, the Broaddus family reached out to the couple that had sold them the house, John and Andrea Woods. The previous owners said they have never
These
received
are
any
small.
letter like that in 23 years of living in the house,
Dude.
except once, a few days before they moved out. The Woods family said they never felt watched in the more than 2 decades at 657 Boulevard, and in fact, rarely felt the need to lock their doors. While they thought the note they received was odd, they threw it out without much concern.
Well, this is kind of like when you buy a house and they didn't disclose to you before that either there were
Yeah.
grisly murders inside of it or it's maybe haunted. and now you start having your chair stacked up on tables without you doing
Oh,
it.
boy.
This isn't something that the realtor, like if there's been a death they have to mention, they're not going to be like, it's beautiful, it's 2.5 bathrooms, 3 bedrooms, there's a watcher, and a beautiful pool.
No big deal. Have fun with that.
Oh,
Still,
man.
the Woods family went with the Broaddus family to the police to report the letters. The police instructed the couples to not tell anyone about the intimidating mail, including their neighbors, who were all deemed suspects.
Damn.
2 weeks later, with the
Uh-oh.
Broaddus family still not moved in, a second letter
Fucking
arrived.
shit.
Disturbingly, this message contained more details about the new owners, including their name, though misspelled, and their children's birth order.
Fucking
and nicknames.
shit.
The author also referenced seeing their daughter painting on an easel in an
Oh my
enclosed
God, no.
porch space, asking, quote, "Is she the artist in the
Fucking
family?"
shit,
End
man.
quote.
You know what's the most disturbing about that to me is the nicknames. Because it's one thing to look up people's like birth names. The idea that they would have nicknames, pet names, means that it gives you the idea that they may be listening.
Excuse
Do you
me.
think he bugged them somehow?
It's possible. Who knows what this guy's
Oh,
capable
man.
of? That's, I guess, the premise I'm trying to set up.
Okay.
All right.
Other parts
Sounds like all the
read,
fucking red
quote,
flags.
"It has been years and years since the young blood ruled the hallways of the house.
Dude.
Have you found all of the secrets it holds yet?
motherfucker a
Will the
fucking
young
vampire?
blood play in the basement? Or are
Why
they
is there
too
random
afraid to
fucking
go
young
down
blood?
there alone? I would be very afraid if I were them. It is far away from the rest of the house. If you were upstairs, you would never hear them scream. Will they sleep in the attic? Or will you all sleep on the second floor? Who has the bedrooms facing the street? I'll know as soon as you move in. It
Fucking
will help me
shit,
to know
dude.
who is in which bedroom. Then I can plan better."
What the
End quote.
fuck?
After receiving this letter, Maria and Derek stopped bringing their children to the house and put a hold on their plans to move in. Several weeks later, a third letter arrived. Quote, "Where have you gone to? 657 Boulevard is missing you." End quote.
He's not good.
You don't like
Is
the
he
way
were
he
just
does it?
calling the
man.
children young blood?
He calls them young blood, which, like, in
Ah.
some cases, it's like kind of cool. Like an older person comes
Hey,
to be like,
young
"Hey,
blood."
young
Yeah,
blood."
that's fun.
That's fun.
But
when
not
you're
a man who is
Young blood ruled the hallways of the house. He's talking about like them as little
kids
blood
running
bags.
around.
Little blood
yeah,
bags.
Yeah, little,
Yeah, it's not good.
However, by the end of the year, the investigation into who the Watcher was had stalled. There was no digital trail, no fingerprints, and no way to place someone at the scene of a crime. Meanwhile, the stress was taking a mental toll on the Broaddus family. Derek said he was experiencing depression. Maria's therapist said she was suffering from PTSD.
Yeah, I don't blame her.
And both were afflicted with levels of paranoia that made much of their daily life seem threatening. Only 6 months after the letters arrived, they decided to sell the house. Due to rumors about the property, however, buyers were hesitant. The Broaddus family sued the Woodses for failing to disclose the threatening letter they'd received. A local reporter found the complaint,
they thought it
which
was
included
bullshit.
excerpts from the letters. His small story became a viral sensation, causing a media circus to swirl around the house. Now totally unable to find a buyer, the Broaddus family considered selling the house to a developer who could tear it down and split the property into 2 homes. The 2 plots, however, would each be less than 3 feet too small for the mandated size
That's
of the
stupid.
neighborhood. The Broaddus family appealed the rule to the Neighborhood Planning Board, who unanimously rejected the proposal.
What's the logic in splitting it up into 2 homes?
It's like when something really bad happens at a hotel and then they just rebrand. It's kind of what they're trying to do here.
I see.
Which is
I have an idea. Why don't they just turn it into a fucking community garden?
like understandable. I just think it's crazy that the neighborhood was like 3 feet too small. Can't do that.
Hey, regulations are regulations. I get that.
That's baloney.
Maria was understandably upset, saying, quote,
Like, why don't they just make it like 3 feet, a bit longer?
"This is my town. I grew up here. I came back. I chose to raise my kids here. You know what we've been through. You had the ability, 2.5 years into a nightmare, to make it a little better, and you have decided that this house is more important than we are." End quote. It should be noted that in
Burn it down.
2018, the Westfield Planning Board approved splitting up a different lot around
What
the
the
corner
shit?
from 657 Boulevard, one that required a larger exception than the Broaddus family requested.
This is just a bad move.
Why?
Or do we think, perhaps, is it a hot fuzz situation where everyone in the neighborhood,
Is in on it.
yeah,
Oh,
they're
yeah,
like,
yeah.
we don't want this new family here.
Oh yeah.
The greater good.
The greater good.
The greater
good.
The greater good.
That Christmas, some families who had vocally protested the Broaddus' plan received threatening hand-delivered letters
man.
signed Friends of the Broaddus
What the
family.
fuck?
More on these later. In spring of 2016, just short of 2 years after the first letter arrived, the Broaddus family found someone to rent the home. The family had 2 large dogs, fully grown children, and a clause in the lease that let them out if there was another letter. Within 2 weeks, another letter arrived. Quote, to the vile and spiteful Derek and his wench of a wife, Maria.
Okay, hang on. Oh boy. Before this, he's been very respectful.
Yeah.
Despite saying like, yeah, I'm gonna steal your blood children.
Yeah, he was really holding back before. Wench, too. He's still stuck with the Old English, though.
Yeah.
He knows theming.
657 Boulevard survived your attempted assault and stood strong with its army of supporters barricading its gates. My soldiers of the Boulevard followed my orders to a T. They carried out their mission and saved the soul of 657 Boulevard with my orders. All hail the Watcher.
What the hell, Watcher?
All hail the Watcher!
Me and my minions, we all did
I've
it.
done it again,
I've done it
like
again.
my father and his father behind him.
Yeah, one thing I've always said, I've always gone on record saying, all hail the Watcher.
That's true, he has said that. He says it every day
Been my
when he
MO
walks
since
into the
day
office.
one, all hail the Watcher.
Starting-
I walk into BuzzFeed, morning, all hail the Watcher.
All hail the Watcher, and we do the same thing. It's like,
All hail the Watcher?
Yeah, all hail the Watcher.
I've got my big stomach tattoo that says that,
That's
but I don't
true.
want to reveal that right now.
There was HR complaints.
The letter continued, quote, maybe a car accident, maybe a
Oh my
fire,
God.
maybe something as simple as a mild illness that never seems to go away, but makes you fall sick day after day after day after day after day. Maybe the mysterious death of a pet, loved ones suddenly die, planes and cars and bicycles crash, bones break. You are despised by the house, and the Watcher won, end quote.
Nah, bitch.
This guy sucks.
He's just really just shooting them out there. He's casting a wide net and hoping one of them sticks.
Yeah.
So then he could be like, if one of those things happens, he's gonna be like, all me.
Watcher, baby.
Orchestrated by the Watcher.
They're like walking down the street, they kind of trip on the sidewalk, and he's like, yes, all hail the Watcher.
Run out of cooking oil? Watcher.
Oh, mosquito bite? No, hail the Watcher.
Oh, you just took a little poopy and you don't have any more toilet paper? Watcher, sorry.
Despite the letter, the renters agreed to stay after more cameras were installed around the house. Now up to current day, it's time to look at suspects for who the Watcher could be. Our first suspect is a man I'm calling the Gamer. Around 11 p.m. one night, while 2 detectives from Westfield Police were surveilling 657 Boulevard, a car suspiciously stopped outside the house. The car was traced to a young woman from a town close by. The home of her boyfriend was on the same block as 657 Boulevard. The woman told investigators that her boyfriend was into, quote, some really dark video games, end quote, including possibly one where he played as a character called the Watcher, according to an investigator's memory. The Gamer agreed to be questioned by police, but he never showed up for his interviews. Detectives didn't have enough evidence to force him to come, so he was never questioned.
They
That's
said
hella
he thought
sus.
he played as a character called the Watcher, according to the investigator's memory. So maybe he didn't say Watcher, maybe he said The Witcher, which is a game.
Knowing how people who don't know about video games react to video games, I'm guessing this is...
Yeah, and if people judged
Yeah.
you, for instance, off of how you play video games, I'm sure they'd have you behind bars pronto, right?
I don't know what you're implying here.
We did murder.
That was Sims
Characters
fun.
that-
Everybody murders people on the Sims.
They were characters based on real people, our coworkers, in fact.
Little Stephen Lim.
Stephen Lim, the Try Guys, we murdered them all.
Yeah, we did.
That was good.
The second suspect is another neighbor, Michael Langford. Derek began to suspect Langford after attending a neighborhood barbecue shortly after receiving the first letter. Langford lived in the house next door, which belonged to his 90-year-old mother. Several of her adult children, all in their 60s, lived with her, and the family was seen as strange but harmless. The Langfords had lived in the house since the 60s, which was when the Watcher claimed his father watched the house. Michael's father had died about 12 years before the first letter arrived, which could have been why the Watcher claimed to have done the job of watching for, quote, the better part of 2 decades, end quote. Langford was also known to spook new neighbors with his odd behavior, like walking through their yards and peeking through windows. Due to the positioning of the houses, Langford would have had a perfect view of the easel they had set on the porch for their daughter that the second letter referenced.
So you're telling me he has a habit of
Walking into people's lawns.
invading people's privacy
Looking in
and
their windows.
watching them.
Yeah, I guess it's pretty easy to see why they suspected him of being the Watcher.
If I moved in and I was like, wow, this place is great, and I just turned to my window and saw,
Well, you know me. My greatest fear is looking at a window and then just seeing a face there with two eyes just watching you like that.
not even a smile, just a,
I actually think a smile is worse. I used to have a recurring nightmare when I was a kid of an evil version of my dad looking through my window.
What?
It stemmed from when I watched Inspector Gadget as a kid. And you remember there was the evil Inspector
Did he
Gadget?
have big, giant
He had
teeth?
big, giant, shiny teeth. And he had big eyes. So he would just stand outside my window.
and your father is a dentist, so
And
the
my
big,
father-
scary teeth are even.
That's true. And we all know that he may have cut someone's head off.
Hey,
What?
I did
That's
not
true.
make
It's
that
just,
claim.
that's canon, I guess, at this point.
Police questioned Michael Langford after the first letter, but he denied knowing anything, and there was little evidence to connect him. Because the police's interview was before the second letter, some believed it would have been especially reckless for Langford to continue sending
Yeah,
letters.
but he seems
As well,
crazy.
those who knew him largely vouched for Langford, thinking him incapable of writing the letters.
I'm pretty done with neighbors and family members saying, I can't believe you could have done this. No one could have seen it coming.
Tell you what, that John Wayne Gacy is the sweetest guy.
Ted Bundy, he's got the eyes of just the kindest man.
A real dreamboat.
Yeah, there's no way Ted could have done that. Like,
Charming is all hell.
you know what serial killers are good at? Being charming.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
how they get you in so they can kill you. So I'm just done with that whole narrative.
Yeah.
The Broaddus family, working with the police, sent a letter to the Langfords telling them they were planning on demolishing the house in hopes of drawing the Watcher to write again. There was no response. Casting doubt on Langford is a test later performed on one of the envelopes which found DNA that belonged to a woman. Thinking Michael's sister Abby may be the Watcher, an investigator compared the DNA to that from a water bottle used by Abby. No match. Shortly after this DNA test, and without explanation, prosecutors informed Derek and Maria that they had ruled out any of the Langfords as suspects. Which brings us to our third suspect, the Broaddus family themselves. Locals
don't think
found
it
it
was them.
suspicious that the Broaddus family was over the years able to move from a $315,000 home to a $770,000 home to a $1.3 million home with refinanced
Scratchies are back.
mortgages. Some accused the family of getting in over their heads with the home and turning to a desperate ploy to
No,
get
I
out
don't
of it.
think it was
Some
them.
neighbors wondered why the Broaddus family kept renovating the house after they decided they wouldn't move in. When major movie studios began courting the family for the rights to their story, a big media deal could have been more motivation for concocting the Watcher.
I mean, if they're continuing renovating something, I think they're just trying to finish what they started.
What's more, I mentioned that some local families received anonymous threatening letters after the Planning Commission rejected the Broaddus'
that was the
proposal to split
Watcher.
the lot. Those letters turned out to be written by Derek.
What?
Look, this guy's nicer than me. I think if people denied my proposal and I saw that they were speaking out about it, I'm confronting them in the parking lot. I'm not doing it through anonymity.
Friends of
Yeah.
Ryan Bergar aren't going to be.
Oh, the friends of Ryan Bergar are right here and right here. And they're going to be going face to face in that parking lot.
He'll get you.
You don't need a case for that.
Yeah, he'll get you.
Don't bring the investigator. Bring the ambulance. You know?
I love it.
Yeah,
That's
right.
scary.
Yeah.
Derek claims those letters were the only anonymous letters he's ever sent and were the result of years of frustration at his
Yeah, I
family's
don't blame him
plight
for that.
and the neighborhood's seeming ambivalence. As well, the psychological trauma from the letters alone makes the Broaddus family being the Watcher seem thin, casting more doubt on the theory that the Broaddus family is the Watcher. A later investigation found that another family on the boulevard had also received a note from the Watcher around the time the Broadduses received their first. Just like the previous owners, the Woods family, that family had lived in the house for years without a problem and threw the letter away. But if the Broaddus family was trying to get out of their home or make a movie deal, why send a letter to another house as
Yeah,
well?
that's fucking
Seems
weird.
a bit preposterous that someone would make up a mystery about themselves and hope to
Yeah.
sell movie rights, basically.
Pretty far-fetched.
Yeah.
How do you explain that to your kids? The psychological trauma
Yeah.
you're going through is like,
Yeah.
you know, it'd be a really fun role play exercise to bring us together as a family. What if we pretended, now picture this, that a man was gonna murder you in your sleep? Thoughts? Unless, of course, the children were in on it and they're like in a writer's room. Like they're like walking around like a whiteboard.
The kids are pitching.
And the kids are
They're
pitching.
putting little index cards up on
They're
the
like in
wall.
there riffing, snapping around. Like maybe.
I know you've got him like threatening the house. What if he goes after us? Yeah, the kids.
And the dad was like, write it.
The
Write it down.
3-year-old pipes up. His father was a watcher, and so was his father before him.
Legacy. It's a legacy stalker.
I know I'm new to
love
this.
it. I
I know
love
I'm-
it. Print it.
What makes the case of the Watcher so fascinating is the limited number of potential suspects, coupled with the complete lack of
I think
evidence
it's a
that
pretty
has
big
stymied
amount of
investigators'
suspects if you
ability
consider
to
the whole
make
fucking
progress.
neighborhood.
This case is very recent, so there's a chance we haven't heard the last from the Watcher. Perhaps some future note will provide the key clue to identifying the person responsible. But until then, the case remains unsolved.
I'm gonna see if there was like any updates to the Watcher case. Wait, Watcher. Okay, it's open but not active. They never found him. That sucks. See y'all in the next one.